What are their leaves like?
They don't fall off. I think they're evergreen trees.
Well, most coniferous trees are evergreen, right? And instead of leaves, they have what?
Pine.
Well, needles, right?
Yeah.
Needles, right? We call them needles. And then they are, right, coniferous means cone bearing, right? That's where the seeds are, and the little pine cones, right? So this tree behind me right here, this stand of trees right here, these are bald cypress trees. And bald cypress trees are deciduous conifers. And that means that they have leaves, or that their leaves are needles, and they have cones, little cones, but in the fall, the needles kind of turn brown, or they actually kind of turn more like an orange color, kind of like your fleece, right? And then they fall off. And that's why they call them a bald cypress tree, because all the leaves fall off. Right? And then this time of year, in the spring, the needles grow back, and they're nice and bright green, right? And these little structures that you're seeing that are growing up at the base, that's part of the root structure, right? So, do you think that the soil these trees are growing in, is it soft soil or is it firm soil?
Firm soil.
Well, think about,
Soft.
right, because all the water, right? The water makes it soft, almost like pudding, right?
Firm means strong soil.
See how soft it is?
Put down.
Pudding.
Except for chocolate pudding.
It's like pudding.
It's like chocolate pudding, right? Only it tastes terrible. All right, so these trees, the cypress trees, they have to have a really wide root base because they're growing in soft soil. And they're also very water tolerant, so they can have their roots covered by water some of the time. Most of the trees that we see in the distance, over this way and over that way that's growing on the upland, if their roots were flooded, then those roots would start to decompose and the tree would die. But not the bald cypress tree. All right, so this is a piece of bald cypress wood right here, okay? And I'm going to pass it around, and notice how dense it is. It's kind of heavy for its size, and it's very hard wood. Native Americans use cypress wood to make dugout canoes. You guys know what a dugout canoe is? Okay? Yeah. So I'm going to pass that around and start it right here. Pass that around.
So
Okay.
these roots must be pretty deep then.
They are. In
That tall
fact,
tree.
what I've understood is that the root ball of a cypress tree is twice as large as the canopy.
Wow.
Right?
It would have to be to
Yeah,
be tall
exactly.
without somebody being able to
Exactly.
operate.
And then
Move your head.
those cypress knees that stick up there, and I don't know why they call them knees. I guess because they kind of look like an old man's knees, right? Like, look at that. They kind of look like
Actually, it's older man.
right, older than me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lydell. You just became my best friend. All right, so but scientists think that those roots, because the tree is actually growing in anoxic soil. That is soil that doesn't have any oxygen in it, right? And so, the trees, in part of their life cycle, they use oxygen, and they're going to absorb oxygen through those roots, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the emergent vegetation are the broadleaf plants that are going along the edge, and they're very water tolerant. And then as you get further up into the marsh, you see things like cattails. Does everybody know what a cattail is?
Yeah.
No, it's a plant, right?
Yeah,
and up at
it's
the
a
top, the
plant.
flower of the cattail kind of looks like a corn dog.
Oh, yeah.
Like a brown burnt corn dog.
Right. So those grow here, and then things like wild rice grows here, right? So like if you went down to your, yeah, it is. If you went down to your supermarket where you buy your food and you buy a box of wild rice, that same stuff grows here, right? Now the stuff you're buying in the store, even though it's called wild rice, it actually grows on a farm. But the stuff here is growing wild, and Native Americans that lived here before Europeans came here, they would have harvested the rice from the marshes, and they would have hunted the waterfowl that live here, and they would have trapped fish that live here, and they would have eaten the roots of the emergent plants. So there was a lot of food here for people, right? Maybe not the kind of food that we want to eat today, but at one time it was a pretty good place for food. Now, wetlands. Who wants to live in a wetland? Raise your hand if you want to live in a wetland.
Oh, no.
Why not?
Because
Because what?
if I might go in the water and I'll drown because I'm
Well, how about this? If I tried to walk across that marsh, what would happen to me? I would sink down into it, right? And I've done that before, and I've sunk all the way up to my waist before in mud, right? I kind of had to crawl out, dig myself out, right?
Dig
Okay,
you a
so
hole.
so if you tried to build a house on a marsh, what would happen to it?
It'll go down.
It would sink. If you tried to pave a road across a marsh, what would happen to it? It would sink, right? Okay, so not really a good place for people, right? What kind of critters live in a marsh that you don't want to live near?
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, right? What else?
So if you like step on those little green mulchy things, you can like sink.
Well, if you step in between them, right? That's how you. That's you've just found the secret of walking in a marsh. Is you step on the plants, and then their roots will kind of support you, right?
I know.
But wetlands. Yeah. What else?
He's like, the
How about snakes and turtles?
I was going to say snakes.
Right.
I like turtles. Except
Okay.
turtles.
All right.
Do you want to have turtles in your bed though?
No!
They'll
All
bite
right,
you
grab
It
one.
might
off.
be fun to have a turtle, but you don't want to live with a turtle.
Okay, so historically, people have looked at wetlands as being bad places, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you guys. And so what they've done is they destroy wetlands, right? They take soil, they bring it in, and they fill them in so it doesn't flood anymore, and that kills the vegetation, and then there's no more habitat. But now we know that wetlands are very important, right? So what are some of the important things that wetlands do? Yes.
Give us oxygen.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of oxygen being produced in wetlands because all of these plants are doing what? What's the function that plants use to make their own food? Yes.
Sugar.
Cycle?
What's that word?
Sugar.
That's,
Photosynthesis.
Fungus starts with photosynthesis.
all right.
Everybody.
Hey, you guys. Let's bring it in. Okay, so photosynthesis, right? And one of the byproducts of photosynthesis is oxygen, right? So that's a good thing. What else? What else is a good function of wetlands? Yes. Oops.
He's got blue saying.
What do you think?
Oh, that made me lose my thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. What do you think?
Water!
Well, what about the water?
It's everywhere.
Well, okay. How about this? We don't know this
Yeah, there's
yet,
an anchor.
but let's imagine that there's pollution in the water here, right? And at high tide, the water floods up into the marsh, okay? And then at low tide, as the water goes out, a lot of the pollution that's in the water is trapped up in the marsh, right? And so it kind of cleans the water. So a wetland acts like a big what?
Washer?
Pollution?
Unpollution getting out?
Photosynthesis?
How about a filter?
Filter.
How about a filter, right?
Ow.
Wetlands filter the water, right?
You're
So
shaking
that's
it.
pretty important. What else? The question was, what are the important functions of wetlands? What good things do they do?
Oh, they like people who don't know about
You know what, Joseph Payne, what is one really important, and just think about it for a minute, function of a wetland?
You guys already kind of mentioned a few things, right?
I don't.
Yeah,
Down.
It's almost exactly
Put
the
your
same
hand down.
things that those underwater grasses
Thank you.
that we talked about during the map.
Do things live here?
Fish.
Fish. I would say either fish or insect.
Well, what do you think it
Okay.
might provide for some of the animals?
If there are things living here, what do we call that? What do we call a place where animals live?
Habitat.
A habitat. All right. So get this. There are some species of plants and animals that only live in wetlands, right? There are some species